The mic is hot. The tea even hotter. This is Live on Air. Okay, hi gorgeous, hello handsome. Before we get into today's episode, I need to apologize because I missed last week's episode. I had a pretty severe allergic reaction. Like, it was genuinely so bad. I had lost my voice, I was trying to breathe, and it was just like proper bad. Obviously there was no way I was going to get behind this mic and talk to you guys or record anything, but I am almost 100% back to health, so thanks be to God for that. And yeah, we are so back. Also, before we get into this, I do want to apologize if you do hear my cat in the background. He's just been a little bit more clingy today. I don't really know why, but anyways, it is Women's Month. Happy Women's Month to all my girlies who are listening. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're becoming, the woman you want to be. And I hope you're giving yourself some grace whilst you figure this out. Now, I just want you to come sit with me for a second. I don't know what you do when you're listening to a podcast. I don't know if you're sitting. I don't know if you're working or listening to this while getting ready. I don't know. But I just want you to hear me out, because I want to ask you something, and I already know this one might hit a little close to home for some of you guys, right? So I just want to ask, who told you it was okay? No, like seriously, who told you? Because I want to talk about something with you when we already know the answer, right? But we don't like the answer. You know what I mean? You know you're about to do something questionable, right? You haven't been told your friend yet, but you already know what she's going to say. You know, she's going to pause, she's going to ask you questions, she's going to remind you of, the last time that happened, and eventually she's just going to look at you and say, girl, and that one word is going to irritate the crap out of you. Not because she's being mean or anything like that, but because you know exactly what's coming next. And the worst part is she's probably right. So you think, okay, I'm just not going to tell her, and it sounds like you just don't trust her, but actually you trust her enough to know, that she's going to tell the truth, right? So instead, you start looking for somebody else, another friend, somebody you just met, somebody online, a stranger, anybody, and you tell them the story, right? And they go, girl, honestly, do what makes you happy. And you're like, babes, thank you. But my love, why did that make you feel better? Because you weren't actually looking for advice, right? If you really think about it, you were looking for permission. And that is what I want to talk to you about today, because there is a very specific kind of dishonesty that happens when you really know what you need to do, but you keep asking people until somebody gives you an answer that you can live with. Not necessarily the right answer, but the comfortable one. And I think we need to talk about that, because let's be honest, there are things you already know. You know when a relationship is bad for you. You know when a friend has changed. You know when you're wasting your time. You know when you're drinking too much. You know when you're spending money you don't have. You know when you're procrastinating, when you're avoiding the conversation, or when you're making excuses, right? You know when you're staying somewhere because you're comfortable instead of because you're happy. You know all this stuff. And you don't need another 12 opinions. You really don't. You don't need another TikTok. You don't need to ask 3 cousins, 2 friends, and when you meet at a party. You do not, right? You just don't like what knowing requires from you. Because knowing is easy, right? Doing something about what you know, and that's where it gets uncomfortable, Knowing you need to leave is easy. Actually, leaving is hard. Knowing you need to apologize is easy. But when it comes to admitting you were wrong, that's another story, right? It's like, for example, studying. That's like, knowing you need to study is like pretty easy. But like having to actually physically put your phone down and start studying, that's when like TikTok and Instagram and all these things are starting to look a little bit more appealing than they really are, right? Knowing you need to stop talking to somebody is easy. Like, oh yeah, that person's bad for me. Like, I should not be talking to this person. But actually blocking the number is not that easy. Maybe until like they piss you off or something, but it's really not that easy. Like knowing you need to change your life, for instance, right? Say you told yourself you need to lose weight or whatever the case may be. You know the steps that you need to do, or rather need to take, but taking those first steps, not easy. Changing your life in general is not easy. It's really, really hard. So instead of doing what we need to do, we do something else, right? We turn a decision into a question. We say, I don't know what to do, right? I don't know what I should do. What should I do? And the truth is, I know what to do. I know you know what to do, right? And I know that despite the fact that I know what to do, I just don't want to do it. I really don't want to do it. So you have two completely different problems. You don't have a, I don't know what to do problem. You have a, I know what to do, I just don't want to do it problem. And this is where I think misplaced trust comes in, right? Because who you trust isn't only about who you tell your secrets to. It's also about who you allow to influence your decisions. Think about that. You can tell somebody your deeper secret, right? And they might have absolutely no influence over what you do next. But you can have one person in your life whose opinion carries so much weight that 5 minutes with them can change your entire behavior, right? That's influence. And you need to be intentional about who gets that kind of access to you, because everybody who has access to you should not have access to your decision making. And I think sometimes we forget that. I think we think, well, they're my friend, okay, but what kind of friend, right? What happens when you listen to them? Who do you become around them? How do you behave? How do you speak? What decisions do you make? Do you like yourself around them? Do you feel closer to the woman you're trying to become? Or do you just leave their company thinking, oh, why did I just do that? Because, babe, sometimes I feel like someone doesn't have to be a bad person to be bad for you, right? And you need to understand that, and you need to really, really just distinguish that within your circle. You can love somebody, you can have history with people or with somebody, you can be, incredible, or you can have incredible memories with somebody and still recognize, I don't like who I become around you. You don't need to be a villain, but you need to have awareness. You really just need to have awareness. And let me just give you an example. Let's say you have a group of friends, right? You shouldn't be going out tonight. You have work tomorrow, or you have an exam coming up. Actually, I did write my exams. But anyways, you have an exam coming up. You've been, trying to save money, or, you've been trying to get your life back together, whatever the case may be. And your friends say, girl, come out, let's just go, it's gonna be fun. And you already know, you have to spend your money, you have to spend money, you're going to get home late, you're going to wake up exhausted, tomorrow's just gonna be a whole mess. But you go anyway. And then while you're there, somebody suggests something you shouldn't be doing, right? And then you end up doing it anyways. And now you're sitting there thinking, oh damn, why did I do that? Well, you knew before you left the house. And this is where I want you to look at the people around you. Not just, are they good people, but you have to also ask, do these people make it easy for me to betray the person I'm trying to become? Because that's a much better question in my opinion, right? It's not, are they good people, but do they make it easier for me to betray the person I'm trying to become? You might have a friend who would never intentionally hurt you, but every time you're around them, you make decisions that you regret, right? You drink when you said you wouldn't. You spend when you said you were saving. You gossip when you said, you were done with that. You sleep around when you said you wanted to take a break. You skip things that matter to you. You become reckless, or worse, you become somebody you don't recognize, right? And then you go home and blame yourself. But maybe you need to look at the environment too, right? Because your environment is teaching you something, and you need to decide whether you like the lesson. 9 out of 10 times, I don't think we like the lesson that we're being taught. But now I want to talk about the other side, because maybe you're the friend people come to when they don't want to take accountability. Maybe you're the easy friend. You're the understanding friend. The girl, you're the girl who says, or the friend who says, girl, do what makes you happy. Why am I stuttering on my words? Maybe you're the friend who says, girl, do whatever makes you happy, right? And you just listen. You're not judgmental. You're compassionate, and that's beautiful, right? Being non-judgmental is beautiful. Being compassionate is beautiful. Being a safe person is beautiful. But being safe doesn't mean being silent, because imagine your friend comes to you and keeps going back to the same man. You can see this person keeps going back to the same man, or she keeps going back to the same job that she doesn't like, or back to the same friends that she don't, whatever the case may be, right? And every time she comes to you, she's crying. Every time she says, oh, this is the last time. And then 3 weeks later, she's back. And you say, well, my love, if you're happy, girl, no, she's not happy. You know she's not happy. She knows she's not happy. And you're not helping her by pretending you can't see it. You don't have to control her. You don't have to make, the decision for her. You don't have to insult the man, the family, whatever the case may be. You don't even have to tell her to leave. You can just simply say, dude, I love you, but I'm not going to make this decision for you. However, I need to be honest with you. I don't think this is good for you, right? I think that's friendship. That's the basis of a friendship. Because supporting somebody doesn't require you to support every decision they make. And I think we need to get comfortable with that. Because there is a version of friendship where everybody just validates everybody. Nobody challenges nobody or anybody. And nobody asks questions. Nobody says, girl, what are you doing? And everybody just feels safe. But in that friendship, nobody grows. And I'm not interested in that kind of friendship, quite frankly. And I don't think you should be either. I want people who can love me enough to tell me when I'm full of shit. And I know I am full of shit a lot of the times. And I also just want to be the person for those people, right? I want to be that person for the people I love too. But now, let's flip it again. Because your friends aren't automatically right. And I don't want you leaving this episode thinking, Liv said I should listen to my friends no matter what. No, absolutely not. Your friends can be wrong. Your family can be wrong. The people who love you can be wrong. And there are people who call your growth unrealistic because they can't imagine doing what you're trying to do. Maybe you want to start a business and they tell you, girl, be realistic. Maybe you want to move and they tell you something along the lines of, why would you leave? Like, stay living at home, like free rent. I'm not saying free rent. Like, you don't have to pay rent, meals, whatnot. But maybe it's just not for you, right? Maybe you want to change careers and they tell you, but you studied for this. Maybe you're changing your lifestyle and they say something along the lines like, no, but you've changed. You're not who you used to be. And maybe you have changed. Maybe you're supposed to. You don't need everybody around you to understand your next chapter. You really don't. You need to know why you're entering it. So don't confuse accountability with somebody's fear. And don't confuse somebody's disagreement with proof that you're wrong. You still have to think. You still have to pray. You still have to use your own judgment, because there is another trap. And it sounds like everybody around me thinks I'm wrong, therefore I must be jealous. Oh, babe. No, you cannot make everybody who disagrees with you a hater. Sometimes people are wrong. Sometimes you are wrong. And, your job is to figure out which is which. And that's where I think this gets really uncomfortable, because there's a difference between they don't understand who I'm becoming and I don't want them to see what I'm becoming. All right? Just sit with that for a minute, because you need to know which one you're dealing with. Maybe you are genuinely growing. Maybe you're finally making decisions that align with the life that you want. Or maybe you've started calling everything growth because nobody around you can question you anymore. Maybe you're calling it freedom because nobody can tell you no. Maybe you're calling it peace because nobody's holding you accountable. Or you're calling it independence because you don't want anybody to challenge you. Maybe you're calling it being spontaneous because you're making reckless decisions. And babe, I just want to ask you one question. Who told you it was okay? Genuinely, who told you it was okay? And I just have to come back to this one story in the Bible, which kind of just makes me think of this whole thing. I will be lying if I tell you what verse in the Bible this is from, but there was this king, I think his name was King Uzziah or Ahaziah. I don't know how to say his name, but anyways, King Ahaziah. He had like an accident, and instead of seeking, the God of Israel, like seeking help from the God of Israel, he sends his messengers to consult with Beelzebub, right? So Beelzebub was like, I think another god or a deity or something like that. Nonetheless, so on the way, Elijah stops these messengers, and they basically told him, oh yeah, no, we're going to Beelzebub to get help with this dude. And essentially he asked them a very simple question. Is it because there is no God in Israel that you're going there? And when I read that, I thought, damn. Because imagine applying that question to your own life. Is it because I have nobody? No. Is it because nobody loves me? No. Is it because I have nobody I can trust? Maybe not. Or is it because I already know what the people I have are going to say? And I think that what hurts more, that one is one we don't really want to admit, because maybe you do have people, maybe you just don't want their answer. You don't want the friend who says, don't go. You want the friend who says, girl, have fun to the fullest. You don't want the person who knows your pattern. You want the person who knows today's story. You don't want somebody who will tell you, this is the third time, you need to stop. You want somebody who will say, forget about the past, do what feels right for you, or do what feels right to you. And now you feel better. But feeling better doesn't mean you made a better decision. Relief is not the same thing as wisdom. You have to remember that. And this is why I want you to be careful with the people you seek advice from. Not because everybody's evil, not because strangers are bad, not because you should become paranoid or anything like that, but because rather the person giving you advice is not the person who has to live with the consequences of it, right? They get to go home. You don't. And they get to say, girl, I would do it. You have to wake up tomorrow and deal with whatever doing it actually cost you. They don't have to do with your life. You do, right? So don't outsource your judgment. You can listen, you can take advice, you can get perspective, you can ask questions, but at the end of the day, you have to own the decision. And I think that's why this matters so much, because eventually you can't blame the friend. You can't blame the stranger. You can't blame the man. You can't blame the job. You can't blame the environment. You can't blame your family. You can't blame the person who gave you permission. At the end of the day, you still chose. And I know that sounds harsh, but actually, I think it's also very freeing, because if you chose it, you can equally just choose differently. You don't have to wait for somebody to save you. You don't have to wait for somebody to give you permission to leave. You don't have to wait until everybody understands. You don't even have to wait until you're no longer scared. You can simply say, okay, I see what I've been doing. I don't like where it's taking me, and I'm choosing differently. And then you choose differently. So I want you to think about something after this episode, right? Think about the people you run to when you already know the answer. Who do you call? Who do you text? Who do you send that long ass paragraph to? Who do you ask, am I crazy? Who do you go to when you want somebody to tell you you're not wrong? And then ask yourself, why them? Do I trust their wisdom? Do they have the context? Do they know me? Do they understand what I'm trying to build? Do they want the best for me? Do they challenge me when I need it? Or do they simply make me feel better? Because those are not the same thing, right? And I want you to ask yourself, another question. Who do I become when I listen to this person? That's the question. Not, are they fun, or do they love me, or have they always been there for me? No. Who do you become? Because I can love you and still be bad for you. And you can love me and still be bad for me. Love is not the only measurement. You should know this by now. Look at the fruit, right? What does this relationship produce in your life? Does it produce peace? Does it produce growth? Is it discipline? Is it courage? Is it honesty? Or is it chaos, recklessness, temptation, confusion, maybe regret? Pay attention to that. And if you're listening to this thinking, okay, Liv, but what if I don't have people who tell me the truth? And to that I say, then learn to tell yourself that. Learn how to tell yourself the truth, because eventually you need to become somebody you can trust. You need to be able to sit alone and ask, dude, what am I doing? And then actually listen. Not, what do I want to hear, or what would make me feel better, or what would make this decision easier? Just what is truth, right? What is true? What is right? What is aligned with the person I say I want to become? And then act accordingly, because you don't need another opinion when you've already ignored 10. You don't need another sign when you've already seen the pattern. You don't need another person to tell you it's okay. You already know. You just don't like what knowing requires from you. And honestly, I get it. Walking away is hard. You know, admitting you were wrong is hard. Starting over is hard. Disappointing people is very hard. And being alone is also hard. I feel like even changing your habits is hard, right? Choosing the better option when the easier option is right there, it's hard. But you know what's also hard? Living with a decision you knew you shouldn't have made. Regretting something you already saw coming. Looking back and thinking, I knew, like I just knew. I don't want that for you. I really don't. So before you go looking for somebody to tell you that it's okay, take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, who told me it was okay? And if the answer is nobody, if it was just you trying to find somebody who would make you feel better about something you already knew wasn't right, then just stop. Honestly, stop. You don't need permission. You need honesty. You need courage. And you need enough self-respect to act on what you already know. Because the person who loves you enough to tell you the truth is more valuable than the person who makes you comfortable in a lie. And eventually that person has to be you. So maybe this week don't ask, what do I do? Or what do I want to do? Right? Rather ask yourself, what do I already know? And then ask, what am I going to do about it? Right? Because knowing is better. Like, knowing is good. But knowing isn't the finish line. It's the responsibility that comes with knowing. And if you know, then you have a choice. Anyway, I feel like I just sat you down and gave you like a little pep talk or whatever. But you know what? I think I needed it too. And if you're listening to this thinking, okay, Liv, I feel attacked, like you're done. I'm sorry. But maybe you also needed it to hear it. I don't know what said needed it. Maybe you also needed to hear it. And if you disagree with me, that's okay too. It really is. But actually, tell me what you think. I want to hear your side, because maybe I'm missing something. Maybe you have a completely different perspective, and that's what I love about this conversation. You don't have to agree with me. You really don't. I just want you to think, and just think about who you trust. Think about who influences you. Think about who you become around certain people. And most importantly, think about the moments where you already knew the answer, but went looking for a different one. Because, my love, who told you it was okay? Again, who told you it was okay? Alright, I'll see you next week. Take care of yourself. Be careful who you give access to, and be even more careful about who you give permission to influence you. Alright, bye gorgeous, bye handsome.
Same time, same place. Until then, let's keep it cute.